Hello again, Steve here. I was talking to a friend of mine last night who is a guy I respect a lot because of his insight and his dedication to what is most truthful. He likes to use the teachings of the Buddha to give him some clarity because he likes the consistency inherent in them, I guess, and the benefits he gets from the practice, which is not to say that he's Buddhist. He likes the teachings of the Buddha. And I was talking to him last night, and he talked about this thing called Romanticism. He talked a little bit about um, especially the German philosophers who brought out Romanticism to maybe a similar extent that the Greeks brought out tragedy in their stories and their philosophy and whatnot. And I thought it was really interesting because he agreed that one of the differences perhaps between the teachings of the Buddha and Buddhism is that Buddhism is a romanticized version of the teachings of the Buddha. Perhaps among other things, perhaps politicized as well, but certainly romanticized version of it. And I would like to think, or not necessarily like to think, I just kind of get the sense that hucksterism can thrive in romanticism. I mean, people like Deepak Chopra and so on, I get the sense that, perhaps they're not aware of it, but they paint those old ideas up a little bit in a romantic way. This idea of achieving the bliss and the attraction of the universe and all these words. There's a lot of buzzwords used that kind of makes people's heads spin a little bit in a intellectually drunken way almost, and embellished, and a little bit, which when we're trying to get deep into the truth, when we embellish things too much, they can just get us off track into this fluffy area as a sideline. So I think that hucksters use romanticism, priestly classes, politicians, and what have you, and so do tribes and societies. And my friend was saying that maybe it's actually a benefit, or it's part of the evolutionary process, that tribes and greater groups and so on have romanticism in their stories and in their origin tales and what have you. Perhaps because it creates cohesion. You don't have to be an intellectual heavyweight to remember a fantastical story. And if everybody has that story, it's some kind of a connection, right? And of course, they're wrapped up in magic and rituals and supernatural stories and powers and what have you. And it's all just, it's very grandiose, and it's kind of foundational to the commonality among groups. And of course, it sets people apart, one tribe apart from another tribe too. But however, if we are to be honest with ourselves, so on the outer side, this romance seems to work. Perhaps it has benefits. We could say it has benefits. But we turn it inside. When we go inside, introspective, self-knowledge, and this sort of thing, we must, of course, then use our rational sense as an arbiter to be able to see through the fluff and realize that it's realize that stuff is what it is, which is this fantastically romantic for a purpose, right? For a cohesion purpose, for a control purpose, or whatever. And when we realize that, we can still refer to all those old stories, but because we have this filter off of irrationality and the open flood of rationality, we're able to cut through the chaff and get to, so we're able to take Buddhism and see the message of the Buddha in it, right? Take the Bible and see some of the message of Jesus in it, or the Guru Granth, whatever it is, and see the message of Guru Nanak in it, perhaps, or the nuggets of value that are in there. And I think it's something to be cognizant of, this tendency that we probably all have to fall for this romanticism, because it's very seductive, right? It's, of course, it very often goes straight to emotion because we've been inculcated in it from the time we were very young, and there's like trigger points, right? Especially when it has to do with identifying with our herd or our tribe. But nevertheless, if we're not aware of it, if we allow it to distract us in such a way, it can cause us to be irrational and within ourselves. And we would no longer, if we're irrational, we no longer see it as just a story to maybe get some information from. Um, it becomes and the other thing that happens too, I think, is that there's the tendency in romanticism or in ritualism to think that this way, like you have to be kneeling down in order for God to hear you, or you have to be focusing on your breath in order to meditate, when you could focus on your little finger if you wanted to, whatever it is that you focus on. It's we tend to want formulas as human beings. That's the other thing. That's probably the other reason why it's cohesive, right? Because a romantic idea of something, an ideal, is like a template. Like there's this virgin here and this Trinity here and this, Krishna over here and Allah and so on, and sorrowful mysteries and all kinds of stuff. And those are put forth within the romantic idea as truths. But if we take that in as ultimate truth, then we're in a contradiction with ourselves, right? You see, it's like if we read when we were kids, if we were read to by our parents about the story of Peter Pan, if we're told that it's true, then we start asking questions because we sense the contradiction. There's a story about a guy flying through the air. Well, the kids never saw a guy flying through the air. He doesn't think he could fly through the air. It's doubtful and so on. Well, if he's told that it's true, then he begins to adopt contradictions. And the more and more that we're taught that. And so that the process of romanticism begins, right? And but if we're told that it's just a story, then we can bring that within ourselves and say, okay, just a story, a fantastical story, even a romantic story, can have value in it. I can learn something from the story. But I can use my rationality to see that contradiction from what I actually experience versus what the story is telling me. The literal words. So you can glean the nuggets out of it without having to fall for the romanticism and the fantasy that it is. I don't know if this is helpful. Bit of a ramble, but I thought it was really interesting, this chat I had, and I really enjoyed chatting with this guy because he really has a keen sense of interest in these matters. And I love it when I talk to somebody, when I get to hear somebody who has that keen of an interest and is able to articulate it very well and also back it up with references, such as his reference his favorite reference is the Buddha, because as he said, the Buddha was a profoundly rational man, and it's only been his message has been dressed up through what we call now Buddhism, right? Anytime there's an ism, it's almost always the followers who have made something up, the priestly class, who want to then profit, the hucksters who want to profit off of. So because they got to be able to package all this up so that the tribe can understand it. Because after all, or the tribe can at least pantomime it. Because after all, what the Buddha was teaching, only a very, very, very few would actually get to the point of being rational enough to be honest with themselves and really understand it. So if something's really profound and you want lots of people to know it, you got to romanticize it and fluff it up with all kinds of fantasy and stories and so on of this great guy and so on. I think. What do you think? Is it valuable to talk about romanticism in terms of what it is, right? A tendency we have, but if we actually believe the fluff surrounding it, when we work on ourselves, I don't think we're making that much headway. Anyways, if I said enough on this, I'll sign off for now, and we'll talk again soon, I hope. Bye for now.